So we're back, and we're actually not back with a smashing Sudoku, but that's the intro I have, so I'm just using it again. I'm sure you all know sort of who I am. We don't have questions today, like the kind of hidden contest is over. That email still gets to me. I've got lots of emails if you ever want to reach out. But today we don't have a question, we have an announcement. For those who haven't been watching the website, GM Puzzles is back. We're back with uh, basically a conversion. We've had book products that have sat alone as PDFs and not had a conversation element around them. And we felt, what if we sort of took that concept, merged it with the blog, and had like a platform that allowed for that conversation, but also with a little bit of revenue behind it, which would help support the authors and editors who try to bring you the site. We're not a profitable company. We're not even sure we want to be a profitable company. I guess like others will say, like as the owner, it's weird they'll say that. Like I want to be a patron of really beautiful puzzles, and I want to have this be self-sustaining. So this can exist beyond the ability of me to sort of spend time with it. And I think that's, at least for the next 5 years, what success would look like if we can get to there. We're far from there right now. But we're back. We're trying some new things. We are trying to spark conversations in different ways. And so even our use of this YouTube channel will look a little different. And for sure, there'll be some things on it that aren't just puzzles and Sudoku, but hopefully you can know the videos you want to watch and sort of connect in other ways with things going on. Like the metaphor of smashing the Sudoku is around a time I was again dealing with sort of mental health and other things. And like one of the projects for this year is telling the life of a Sudoku, sort of biography of a puzzle that my name is closely associated with, but I can't tell that story without sometimes telling some stories about me and my life and sort of the role of puzzles and things in it. And so I want to sort of open up in different ways with some new content and hopefully see where it takes us. But the first place it's taking us is not a broken window, not a Sudoku. It's to a puzzle that's almost Sudoku-like and is one of the first puzzles we're releasing from our subscription. This was the favorite of the Easy Track puzzles in the first week of the subscription. So let me just give you the quick primer on the subscriptions. The standard blog week looks like a standard blog week. We're bringing, maybe slightly better or at least differently curated puzzles to the standard blog week, but the familiar GM puzzles you liked still going to be there. And we're putting in the same genres a warm-up puzzle before it on the same day. So Friday was going to be an Acre. In this case, this week, Saturday was the Acre. Saturday before that, Hard Acre was a warm-up style Acre of 1 or 1.5 stars. Still like well designed, a good easy puzzle to help train or interest people in the puzzle, sometimes something that reinforces or teaches a rule. It's an art to make easy puzzles, but I don't think puzzles can become broadly accessible and sort of become a smash hit if you don't sometimes sort of figure out how to present them in a way that gets solvers started with them. And so that's one of our goals. We also call them warm-ups because I think we may overwhelm our solvers with different genres through the different days because we have a lot of puzzles we love. And a warm-up will get you back into thinking of the rules before you hit the hard puzzle. And so if you want to like know that you're doing your best on the intended sort of larger challenge of the day, the warm-up gets you into them. So I think it does something for our existing audience. It certainly is going to be helpful for growing the audience if we hit the mark well. And so that's one of the things we're trying. But we know some people ask for more from us, including some of the special things we do in books like large combination puzzles or puzzle hunt style puzzles. And so Sunday is a day we're going to turn the knob to 11 and do different things, relax the constraints for authors a bit. But these puzzles will take longer. Like these may be 30-minute or 1-hour puzzles, but they're now a benefit of the subscription. Every week you'll get one of these. You won't get a giant puzzle every week. You'll get a giant puzzle once a month. But every Sunday will be something else in a rotation of things. You'll get a puzzle hunt puzzle once a month. And we're going to see how much our audience likes that. Our audience is not all English speaking, so we're trying to make accessible puzzle hunt puzzles that are still logic based, but resolve like a Microsoft Puzzle Hunt or MIT Mystery Hunt style to a English phrase or word answer, sometimes with indirect clues or an aha solver has to guess. And so it's an interesting thing for us to do. We already have some examples from the blog, but they come out like once or twice a year. I had 4 Microsoft Puzzle Hunter puzzles last year that were some of the only puzzles I wrote last year, but solvers really uniformly liked them, so we wanted to ask more authors to make them. The last core point is we had mentioned exploring Discord as the puzzle delivery platform. We tested, got lots of feedback about it. It's not going to work for that at all, but it does work for allowing us to have conversations, our team to our authors, our team to our audience to our authors. You're not going to have a book you can't talk to anyone about when you enjoy a puzzle. You can actually talk to the author of that puzzle again, like you could with the blog. Like that's some of the part of putting the kind of book side on what will look like a blog side platform. It's not trying to just be a monetization grab. Like that's, again, I want to stress the point. We're trying to become self-sustaining and continue what we've been doing to grow puzzles, and having a free blog with 2,600 in the archive. Please just continue solving them. That was like thousands of hours from hundreds of people and a lot of my dollars to pay for puzzles that have never paid for themselves. And so that investment is our gift to the community. And now we want to grow the community, and growing the community needs support in different ways, and our model is going to be through subscriptions. And I'm excited for them. We are excited by the early response to them. We don't have our whole audience on the site yet, but we've got a great start. We've certainly seeded a large enough audience that the puzzles are being discussed and debated, and new ideas are being shared. It's getting me too excited to kind of be engaging with puzzles again. And so if it's getting me excited where I'm sometimes the least excitable about puzzles, I think that's a great sign of where we're at. We're gonna probably in the future like clip the video here and just start sort of from the next side on, but just as a kind of like editorial about looking back on the first 10 years of GM Puzzles, one of the things we always felt we would do, not because we were early enough to be a main publisher when Sudoku became large, but we always had a challenge, and my challenges to the team of like, would we be the site that either discovered or published what might be called the next Sudoku? And so one of the things that we're thinking about for 2023 forward is what we'll call the next generation puzzles project. And it's not just about puzzles, it's about puzzle authors too. And we've already have been working on this for a little bit of time, but this was a sign of like stuff that you could like not look hard at and say GM Puzzles hadn't failed at in the last 10 years, but I self-assess and say we failed in the last 10 years to take as fast an approach to styles, the 2 or 3 or 5 that might be super, super special, and say this is one we want to support authors, ask about, and encourage if they were willing to let us share, have other authors construct in the same style as the original designer, those things. Like the design space is tough. Like a lot of the design space is puzzles that work once or twice, and they're not great rule sets. And I'm not trying to poo-poo the people who sort of make those things, but we're interested in the puzzles that have a depth and magic in the mix. And maybe you've solved so many Sudoku, you're tired of them. That's fine. Like that's a different conversation for a different day. Like some people like puzzles because they know how to solve them and they just enjoy trying to feel good at them or fast at them, or I just like, I can do this one. But we have a balance of people who love new puzzles and people who love competing puzzles. And we've not done as well with new styles as I think we could. We are not ever, though, going to just publish all the styles out there. There are not hundreds of styles I want on the site. We might add one a month, more likely 1 or 2 a quarter. So if there are 5 new puzzles by the end of this year, 1 in shading, 1 in number placement, etc., that's what we want to do. Today is a story of the first puzzle that for sure is a puzzle we needed to have on the site as soon as it felt right to do it, and as soon as we felt the author was ready to sort of have it on the site with us. And it's from a brilliant American designer. Another sort of part of our goal was to not just have Japanese puzzle creation, and there are other countries that do it, but so many people describe Nickel-y style puzzles. There's a really thriving community in Japan of exploration, and even some really prolific designers that like 10 years ago wrote all these ideas and went off, and now people are finally coming back to those genres saying, oh, we should keep writing this again. Like different people are creative in different ways. But to sort of see this community grow up in different spots, it's been really curious to see, particularly COVID forward, the last 3 years, sort of how much has taken off in different spaces. And Acre is one of the first examples. This is by far the newest puzzle we've published on the site. It was invented in 2020 by Eric Fox. Eric himself has done a lot already as a volunteer into the puzzle community, including like curating new rules sort of descriptions. Like I feel there are 5 or 10 community projects to do something like that. His is one of, if not the better ones of them. We still think we do it well for the styles we have up there, but we don't have rules and info and history pages and all puzzle types. So maybe that's even a thing we can do, is like give a reason we will or will not publish a puzzle, but encourage the designers by doing stuff like that. We don't have to encourage Eric to make more Acre. I encourage even other designers to start creating more Acre. It's already in the discovered space of exciting puzzles. I sometimes use this metaphor when I was talking about sort of how I see the land of puzzles in Sudoku-based talks 10 years ago. And I wanted to at least have a fresh image for it. This is the year of generative AI. So I'm a paying user of DALL-E a little bit. It's just to do things fast. I asked it for a big map of a fantasy land with mountains and deserts and water and all that for showcasing the world of puzzles. That's a horrible prompt, but that's the extent to which I care about prompts. I picked the 4th of those 4 images, and for a few reasons. First, it has some stuff I can't explain, which is often an issue of generative AI. The lower left is one of my fun features in the map. Where can I like label something that just doesn't like, it's where the map ends and doesn't make sense. Here be dragons is on a lot of the maps from centuries ago, and a phrase I come back to. It's the puzzle hunt team I never played with, but was in the Seattle community and has some of my friends on it. That does not look like a map shape to me. It's not an archipelago of things. It's not even like a loop, or it looks like floating detritus. And so here be randoms, and that's maybe like a random line puzzle that's sort of it's an unsatisfying solution to a puzzle, but it's very close to Lake Loop. And so somewhere between those is where loop and path puzzles actually live in this map. And I'm not going to call that a Hataru beam, although I guess I just did. Like that's not a style we're going to kind of jump to first. But you know, there's something when you think about puzzles that sit together as a trait of what matters in puzzles, and also kind of like where would you put your city versus where are you in the desert? And maybe you've got like the right idea you can squeeze like some drops of water out of, but you're not, you want to just keep going. Like you've got the start of a frontier, but where are you really getting to the promised land? And so whether you're starting from Lake Loop or Sabali or Pakistan, I guess is my horrible pun for today. I'm not going to come back to this as my guess for region division puzzles. Every fantasy map needs to have some ominous sounding thing that's actually not that ominous. And so the shade, whatever that means, maybe there are trees and like there's this whole colony of like, you know, creatures of some sort that kind of live and thrive in the shade. They sort of have the opposite magical powers of like getting power from the light. They get power from the dark. Ooh, that's exciting. Anyway, like the shade is where Acre lives. And I don't think it's on the frontier of the shading space. I think it's actually a good, stable, an important thing in the middle of the shading space that borrows from existing rules, but found a kind of combination of rules that does something that we'd not seen before. And for sure, I'm guessing when Eric found it, the way like he told us at least some of the dates of this, the idea was kind of more in the middle of 2020. This is when in my life I was not in the lab. I was like sitting in this room and talking to people like 800 miles away to kind of help direct them through COVID research, but the kind of stresses of 2020 led to the creation of this really interesting style. But Eric didn't publish the first idea he had. At least I don't think so. Like that's how I interpret this, is Eric's a designer who understands how to get to quality and then release with a reason behind those releases to kind of get attention. And I should just go through his blog someday. Like I just, maybe that's the meaning of a sabbatical year, is doing stuff like that. Like puzzles isn't kind of my life journey right now most of the time, but I want to really say how much when I first found this puzzle, like I don't say that in my life. Like with Tapa, I said that. With Sudoku, if I were in this mode like 15, 20 years ago, I would have said that. I mean, the first time I solved a number place puzzle in the early 1980s, which is what Sudoku now is, was a style that had too many givens. It had like 4 circle cells around the grid to kind of give you, it didn't have the magic yet. It improved by clue subtraction and symmetry and making them hard. Like number place was never hard. That was like why it wasn't yet ready. The Japanese constructors made it hard, and then Niccoli themselves gave it a new name that became Sudoku. And I'm telling a different story, but like there's an evolution that got to this. Acre worked out of the gate. And we're going to actually today like show you, and I haven't solved this recently, I'm going to show you the first puzzle Eric made. And it's even an interesting homage to the puzzle that we're highlighting from Ashish. It started on a 3x3 grid. Sorry, a 3x3 boxes, a Sudoku-like grid, and not at all as a Sudoku. And Eric didn't kind of give it a title like we gave ours a title to kind of just highlight that. It's kind of a weak title. The puzzle sort of speaks magic itself. But why does this style work and why is it interesting? I think one of the things designers don't always get is you don't need tons of rules. You can make hard puzzles by having tons of rules because you're giving your solvers lots of things to think about. But honestly, it's an elegant design. And if one of these rules only works a little bit in one spot, like the very last thing I have to do in a Sudoku is figure out, oh, those cells, one is less than the other because it's got a red dot or it's a triangle. Like, I think that's a designer who couldn't make a unique puzzle and they had to fix it, and they fixed it by adding a rule. That's not what these rules do. These are 3 rules that work together, and few puzzles work with less than 3. Some do, some need 4. But like this is a magic mix. It's got a global constraint. This constraint is a rule that a lot of shading puzzles use. Some use it only for the shaded cells like Tapa and Nurikabe and this puzzle style Acre. Others like Yin Yang use it for the shaded and the unshaded cells, but you often want a global reason that drives some of the tension through a solve. You may not know when it comes up, but it's giving you another reason for progress. And it's also giving you something as a solver that makes you feel you're making progress across whole grid. Once the whole thing is connected, you're probably close to done and you're just checking the last local constraints. It's not as super powerful as you've finished the loop or you filled every cell in a Sudoku, but a global constraint that works. There's a reason it's a lot of puzzles. It's a good thing to have. It's part of the shade. You know, the right part of the shade are like connectivity shade puzzles. Maybe the left part are not, but like a whole lot of the shade uses connectivity. No 4 in a row itself was also not a unique rule. Like this was not Eric's invention. Other designers and people who made variants have put this into grids before. We've had Tapa with a no 4 in a row. We've had Nurikabe and no 4 in a row. It forces you to make some bends as opposed to long straights. So it's a nice thing that breaks a row-based constraint to have a little bit of extra. It's not at all as common to see it with the unshaded cells as well, and so it's one of the things we credit Eric with doing, but really the thing that I would call part of the Acre magic recipe is also knowing the glue, which is something about regions. In the same way as Sudoku, when a Sudoku is rows, and columns only. It wasn't a Sudoku, it was a Latin square. Latin squares do not solve with the same Sudoku-ness and magic that Sudoku has. A third constraint that takes these diagonal cells and make them matter to each other helps. And like with Acre, you'll even see, like, surprisingly, even our example has a lot of 3x3 cells. You're making something about, say, these three together being shaded also impact the space right to the right. So this example has like an 8 in this space. One cell is unshaded. That means I must have a full column. I must have a full column. Some other column has an empty in it. But like now I'm having this local rule apply across through a few local places and do something more. And so that connectedness, these three work together to open up a potential for dozens to hundreds of interesting puzzles, particularly as you explore different regions, different numbers. These rules don't change, so they're the familiar elements someone has in their toolkit to bring to a puzzle, and the glue is actually what the puzzle is. However someone decides to use the glue is what the construction space is here. The novelty is here, but these things above, maybe I have these labeled wrong. The global and local are the glue from what makes the style. But this is a great design space. These three rules work. They don't need more. Please don't add more. This is the start that got us super excited. This is not a case, there'll maybe never be a case of puzzle I will give the author no notes about. My one note to Eric is probably the name of this puzzle is awful. Puzzles I don't think are help as a community when they have like meaningless or newly formed words in different ways. Like even if I looked at Acre, I wouldn't know how to pronounce it. So one of the things we have on our site is at least sometimes pronunciations. I'm pretty sure Acre is a way to say it. It's said exactly like the English word acre, which is one of the words it comes from. And Eric has the favorite letter Q, so that's the origin, full up. No other meaning behind it. It doesn't tell you what the puzzle is really about. I guess the sense of land is talking to the region space. Like we internally debated using words like disconnect for and other stuff. I don't even think I presented that idea to Eric Fox. There's enough conversation from other authors saying it. The authors define the first site until like it takes off elsewhere. It should keep that name. I think the risk for Eric is there'll be some people making computer-generated puzzles in newspapers with the style, and they'll have a fully different name, and then they start to separate credit from that puzzle from the original designer. So, conversation for a later day, but if I've never said publicly the praise for Eric as a designer and Acre as a style, like there's a reason it's now in our blog, and we should have more like these, but not too many more like these. There aren't many that come up in a year. This is for sure one of them. And I'm so excited to not just sort of talk through one of these as a style, but hopefully give you a sense of Acre that you can take and a reason you want to solve more than just the ones in this video. So I'm going to go to our normal now solving mode, and I have the wrong first puzzle up. I'm going to start with the easy one from Ashish. Again, sort of said all of these are Sudoku based in how they look. First thing to generally do is an inventory of the regions to see which are close to full. All these regions are 9 cells because they're 3x3 boxes, so we don't have to kind of do new counting, but this one is a 0 by construct is there, so 0s are very easy to find, just mark them unshaded. Look for 9s, there are no 9s, but the 8s are 1 off and the 1 is 1 off. This has just one shaded cell. It's not going to look like this, so I guess you could do little subtle things like that, but the main thing to know is that we're probably going to use the 8, 1, 8 sooner than we're going to use like the 4. And in particular, after we mark this 0, we're going to come to our first rule, the local rule, the disconnect for rule, as I almost termed it. I don't want 4 in a row, so if I were playing a game like Connect 4 and I got to place a lot of pieces all at once, I'd do this. I'm now going to like break the meaning of Connect 4 because I have to mark this one off because these 3 in a row and column mark this off, and now I've made this diagonal, but there's no diagonal constraint in this puzzle. Don't suddenly add a diagonal constraint to Acre. It's not going to be better. Maybe make 1 or 2 puzzles, see if they're interesting, show them to someone, but like there's something magic in these rules. They don't need too much tweaking. I want to see 100 more like this with these rules, is I guess my first takeaway. Anyway, mark this off. This is an 8. We've now marked the one unshaded cell. All these get shaded in. These get marked here, 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 and here, and here from the disconnect rule. I'm going to now shift to something I do in my own notation to just sort of give you a sense of how the Snyder notation in this style of puzzle looks, particularly with the shaded cells because they have the global connectivity. I will mark places I know I have breaks of connectivity. So I cannot take both of these, and I know this is a darker color, but hopefully it's sort of highlighting the right sense. This would put 4 in a row in, and I could take this, or it's actually a case I take neither of these, but this is giving me a connectivity mark, and the same thing is true over here. And it's actually the case all of these are connectivity marks in one region. I don't want you to kind of think that way because you would never sort of go through the next step of this argument in this way. But we have a tension in the global sense in this grid right now with these three cells, which have this big green gap from these three cells. So something is connecting this over to this. Maybe it's all the way around, maybe it's through the middle. Those are the only two ways it can go. And the thing we should see is this region is going to be hard to pass through. And a no four in a row rule, like even in the top and Urakabe variants, often has you have to make a bend like this. The most efficient way to get through the space is taking only these 4 cells. Another way to get through the space might be taking these 5 cells, but there's nothing that even takes just 3 because you can't take this and this in it. And so you're nowhere near a 1, but even if this were a 3 clue, we couldn't do this. And so connectivity has to come through the space, but it's not coming this way through the space. This is a magic cell. It's the only way to get to this bottom right corner because we can't come through these. And so connectivity marks this in, it marks the rest off, it marks these in, now marks this off. One of the fun traits in an Acre is you start to make subregions. We've now made what was a 4 region into a 2x3 box that has a 1 in it. Kind of works like this clue. This is the only place to stay connected to the rest of the grid. So I mark that in. That marks this in, no 4 in a row. So it went from a global constraint to a region constraint to a low, but it felt natural. Like, at least to me, I've done now enough of these puzzles, but I think in some sense you'll feel that flow. Like the feeling of flow is one of the reasons puzzles are enjoyable. Because now it's like, I feel it's meditative or Zen. Like that's maybe too strong a statement, but anyway, like we got connectivity to get to here. We still have these cells nowhere. We have like a limit of white space, so I want to come through this channel. Often Acre puzzles with the local constraint of the no 4 in a row, you've got to do these bends. So we come through this channel. These 3 now mark off the cell. This is exactly those 8 that's used. This 4 comes down, takes a cell. Again, in this puzzle, we've now made this 2x3 box. It takes 1 more cell. This 4, 6 works just like this 4, 6, only I got a 6 here. I didn't get a 6 there. This has to look like that. So same pattern. This clue isn't strictly needed, but we don't want to add a clue here or there. Like we're sort of going minimal and we're keeping symmetric clues. That's one of our design rules. We require it's not required of the style, but we prefer it to be used, and we think it's kind of a clean requirement for the genre. So that's Ashisha's puzzle, and this is, as I said at the start, an example of a subscription week warm-up puzzle. Wasn't boring, wasn't necessarily hard, but it was interesting. And it was a great thing to kind of talk to and maybe warm us up for a puzzle we weren't expecting to be the next one in the week and not what people solved. But if you never solved Eric's original puzzle, please stop this video. Please go through the link and rules and infos to this puzzling site. Like we're not posting this again ourselves. It's not our duty or role or right to do that. But another 3x3 grid is going to have some things in common, like 8s look more important, 7s look next most important, 6s and 5s are an ignore. So the 8 near the 7, I'm looking exactly across this border as I'm getting started. I have only 1 unmarked cell somewhere in the space to do, but I can kind of say I'm going to get 2 full columns. I'm actually also going to get 2 full rows, but I'm less interested in this than I'm interested in the fact I'm potentially putting 2 unshaded cells in a 7 area, which only has 2 unshaded cells. So these two, or these 2, I think are where the unshaded are for the 7. So these 6 are marked in. I don't know anything yet about the location of the unshaded here, but if I were to mark this as a puzzle, I'd recognize that a 7 always takes at least 1 column that has, in a 3x3 box, this always has 1 column that has 3 that are together. So always one of these cells, this cell, this cell, or this cell, from this black, or this black, will cause an error there. So I don't know which of these are green, but for sure these are black. In my notation that I don't know how to do in Puzzlink, I'd put X's here. But once I sort of mark these in, if you recognize I can't cross this border because that's too many in a row, I must cross this border. It's the only way the 7 gets out. That marks these in, it marks these in. No connect 4 marks these in, marks this in. Coming back to connectivity, I mark these in. Thinking of connectivity still, it comes to mark these in, mark these off from the local rule. I've got a region. Like, it doesn't feel unnatural. I've gone through 3 different kinds of rules, but I've just gone through 3 different kinds of rules again. Like maybe it's just a trait of this grid, but in Sudoku you often do the same. So this Sudoku, this not at all like Sudoku shading puzzle is reminding me a lot of Sudoku. In my normal notation, I'd mark an X here. So this or this are unused because I can't get 4 in a row. So to get up to a count of 7, I only get 1 more here. This is now marked off. This group, again, only has 1 more unshaded to go. It's got to be here, here, or here. So these get marked in. That marks this off, marks this in. Probably want to come through the 6 now because it's got 2 marked off. So only 1 more to go. And it's got to be one of those 2 because of this coming in. So these 5 get in, marks this off, marks this off. think that now helps us in both these spaces. So this 5 has only one more unshaded to go, and I'm not taking all of these. So these must be shaded, and the remaining is somewhere here. It's kind of setting up a connectivity tension if I don't take these together to at least get the bottom to the top, but I don't know that yet. So we're going to probably have to work over here to set up the connectivity tension to force this, or vice versa. If we can't use this, we'll force it here. I've got one unused. I would want to put an X here and an X here because I can't take 4 in a row. So I need to use these, and these with 2 more. I now have a fun pattern that I've seen before, so I'll just describe it more fully. If I had red and blue, I would use it this way. I'd put these in red, these in blue. I have a constraint that says I can take one of these and one of these. That's coming vertically, but I have the same constraint from the right, and so I have to make a checkerboard pattern. I can't do this because I'm making this too long. I can't do this because I'm making this too long. This looks like this. Looks like this. That's actually, yeah, if this weren't marked, it's not strictly true of this pattern before. So at least one of these sides has to be like that. It doesn't need, I don't think it needs this full thing, but it needs something like this thing. And for sure, this has the checkerboard pattern. Why is that interesting? In red or blue in my kind of like notation space, I would say one of these is disconnected. That's this one. Notice this green set is now putting a tension in the grid. It means I must take this to keep it all connected. I have to mark this one off, but from the local rule, I have to mark this one off. This middle does not work at all. So that is bad. So let's mark these off. I have to take the other root of that. I think that's that connectivity thing. Like as a speed solver, I would intuitively try that first. As a logical solver, I kind of try to visualize the other first, because if I show the contradiction, I can move forward. So that's how I went through this puzzle. There might be some other steps in it, but hopefully that's close to what Eric intended. That now marks this off, marks this in. So here's our good 6. Still, like, all of these options look okay. So I want to look over here a bit. I put an X in one of these cells, so I've got a green here, and I have a green here, and those are the 2 greens. So shade, 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 shade. Local rule. I now still have, sorry, I marked this in, so I can mark this off. That marks this in, shades this in. I have to have these work out. So what's the tension? Well, I only have 5 cells left, and there we are complete. So really, really brilliant puzzle from Eric. I probably haven't solved this since I was pointed to Acre. I was not pointed to Acre in December of 2020, but by the time I was pointed to it, I knew I wanted to eventually find a way to highlight it on the site. It's the same way when I saw Top, I wanted to figure out how to highlight it, and eventually with like Sircon as just a general puzzle designer, we got him even to be our managing editor. I don't know what the future holds for Eric and for his work with GM Puzzles in any sense. He's a freelancer still with us, but we found a way to start to encourage him to make more Acre and other stuff, and it's great to see his work and his devotion to the community, and I totally want to give the 5-star the highest rating. Like this is a style that is worthy of great design around it, not computer design around it, and renaming of the puzzle style around it. But this is fun, and I share this with friends who don't always solve logic puzzles, but say if you've not tried something new and you want to see if there's something could interest you, find these. And so there's some audience that might come to this puzzle over time, but that is our first Better Know a puzzle, and it's a really special one. And the next ones may not be as special, but they don't have to be. Again, we're trying to highlight what's good in puzzles, and good and great and awesome and excellent. This is a hard bar to cross, but it's a great place to start with telling a story that we haven't told before of things that caught our attention and why, and hopefully some lessons for the audience to learn, and excitement to go see more puzzles. There are some on our blog, there are some in our books, there are a whole lot more on Eric Fox's site, so please go visit his work and the community that sprung around it as you find them too, and you know, enjoy the shade and Acre as a city within the shade. We'll be back in a few more weeks with some more content like this, but please sign up for a subscription. We're excited to be back and excited to tell our story in new and fun ways. Bye.